Here's another tip for putting together a do-it-yourself strap. Sometimes the shank of the bell is really big, and the slot I cut for your do-it-yourself kit isn't quite large enough for this big wide bell shank to pass into. So sometimes you have to make these the slot in the strap a little bit longer. And I have a hole punch that I use that works really well for this, and you can also use a drill with a drill bit and actually drill a hole out, or you could use a knife to cut a little bit longer slot and then remove the little tab of leather there. But obviously a hole punch like this is really helpful. My preference is if there's any error in where this bell lays between the two slots on the strap, I want it to be high, because gravity over the years will cause the bell to sag a little bit. So if you start on the high side or just even up, then you're better off rather than starting low and then it gets lower. So I'm going to munch a little bit of leather off this to make that slot just a tiny bit longer. And then, there, it's going through. If it wasn't quite long enough at this point, then I would probably take a little bite off the lower end of the slot, but it's going well for me now. But you can see how big that is compared to, for example, a bell like this. So it needed a little extra room. You can see how it pulls the bell off the lining strap because the shank is so long. That's just the way it is, and that's just an artifact of how the bell strap functions with that particular bell. Here's the last step in finishing this bell strap that I was showing you earlier. In a do-it-yourself kit, this hole for the final fastener is already punched. And then what I'm using is a Chicago, I call a Chicago fastener, or some people call it post and screw fasteners. There's a female part that has internal screw threads. It looks like a button on the other side. And then there's a screw that has obviously a screw slot, and then threads, male threads, to go into the female part. So it creates this post and screw and can fasten things like leather together. So in this particular case, my goal is to install this solid brass ring on this and then have an unobtrusive hidden fastener on the back side just to hold it in place. It's much easier than installing a copper rivet, belt rivet, or sewing it in place, so that's why I use the post and screw fastener. I do use a thread locker solution to keep the post and screw tight. It only takes a tiny drop inside the female part of the fastener. So the next step is kind of assemble this, put the female part inside this area. So there's the threaded part, and then there's a button inside. Fold the leather over, match the hole up. I put my finger on the post part on the inside and match the hole up with the opening in the post. Put the screw in and then tighten it up. I tighten it up enough so that the post starts to turn against my finger. It doesn't need to be super tight. This is just enough to hold it. Then I align the slot of the screw kind of vertically just so it looks good. And then you're done. You don't see any visible fastener from the pretty side, and from the back side it's just a little dot of brass.